My 25 meters, fiancé 26F says she doesn't want our future kids to take my last name.
I recently got engaged to my fiancée. Since we are due to get married next year, the topic of last names came up. She says she doesn't want to take my last name due to career reasons, which I respect. I fully support her decision on this. For information, I have an Asian last name. However, she also says our future kid should have her last name as well. This has become a point of disagreement, as I would like my kids to remember their heritage and also feel more connected to the culture. Her reasoning is that our kids will be disadvantaged when it comes to college applications, as it's harder for Asian kids to get into some schools. Giving my kid my last name is important to me, and I wouldn't even mind adding both names together to make a new last name, but she is still hesitant. Is her argument valid on this? Edit. Thank you to everyone for your thoughtful comments. We talked it over and decided to use both our last names, just debating on which one goes first.
Hyphenating using both names makes sense to me, but it's kind of a pain in the ass on forms and such. You can both hyphenate and then everyone has the same last names.
So I have a last name that reflects my heritage. I refuse to change my name. I get that on your fiancé's part. However, her reason for them not having your last name sucks. Hyphenating to have both last names is very fair. However, I think you need to dig into this issue. Have you discussed how your kids will be raised to know their culture on your side? Holidays celebrated? Languages spoken? Traditional clothing worn? Food consumed? You must figure out where your wife stands on this. Is it going to be a constant issue to teach your kids your culture, or will your wife join in and help you?
Hyphenated names are becoming more and more common. You could discuss that as an option. My sister did this with her kids. It's a way of honoring both parents' names.
I feel a common ground is joining the two last names, and yes, you understand they might experience from pushbacks in society and employment, sure, but that's not a really nice thing to say to a partner. She should be proud of your heritage and her own, not try to erase something to please society. Her argument isn't really valid to me because there are other factors that can affect them, like having Asian features, so I don't know what she is getting at. It's simply unkind in my opinion.
Why can't the kids have both last names? Her reasoning seems stupid as hell.
If you're in the US, what she's saying is currently true. There are issues with racial discrimination in college admissions. However, that is one of the weakest arguments I've ever heard to refuse a name. Will your kids even go to traditional universities? And how will the admissions process change over the next 20+ years before your potential children apply? She should not get to shoot down your name over a hypothetical that could be completely different in the future. Your heritage is more important. Hold your ground and work towards a compromise. It seems to me like she just wants to use her name and was looking for justification.
This might be a deal breaker for your relationship. I think it's kinda gross for your fiancé to make it into a race issue. She is aware that your future kids will be mixed, right? If your kids get both of your last names, wouldn't it make it even easier for them to pick and choose when to use one of them if there was a situation where a specific last name might give them a disadvantage?
This has become a point of disagreement, as I would like my kids to remember their heritage and also feel more connected to the culture. This can also be done through other means than last names, e.g. learning your native language, learning more about the culture, celebrating holidays, traveling to your grandparents' home country. Why is your last name more important than hers? Her reasoning is that our kids will be disadvantaged when it comes to college applications, as it's harder for Asian kids to get into some schools. I live in a country where having certain types of last names unfortunately still come with being at a disadvantage in certain regards, unfortunately, e.g. getting a flat job applications. However, for schools, you clearly were able to get into good schools too. So why is this a concern to her? Giving my kid my last name is important to me, and I wouldn't even mind adding both names together to make a new last name, but she is still hesitant. Which name would go first? How will you feel if the kids are unhappy with the hyphenated name, either name, and want to change it to make a new last name? It's great that this is an option where you live, but just curious. How is this going to help your kids remembering their heritage? Or is this simply about you trying to find a compromise? Easy. You can put each child's middle name as your last name and her name for the last name. Covers both of your bases by compromising. My cousins all have the same middle name. It's a cool thing that bonds them and their heritage. She's not wrong about Asian Americans having more difficulty getting into certain schools. But your kids will still be Asian American, even if they don't have an Asian surname. What about hyphenating rather than combining the names into a new name? You want your kids to remember their heritage? You mean your heritage, right? You do realize they are half your wife as well. Her reasoning is that our kids will be disadvantaged when it comes to college applications, as it's harder for Asian kids to get into some schools. This isn't her real reason, because it's insane. It's a societal double standard to presume your name gets priority. But also her logic doesn't make much sense. I guess the question becomes, why is one person's culture of heritage more important than the other? In my country, having an Asian last name wouldn't be a hindrance at all. But I think the only option is a compromise. You could offer up hyphenated names. She may not be a fan, but I feel like this is something important to be on the same page about before getting married. I'm gonna add a maybe unpopular opinion, but in this world right now, if you can make life easier on y'all, then do it and let them take her name. When I had the last name of my ex, my life was easier in so many instances. People were also nicer when they read it. I do have a talent when I speak to people at institutions, offices, etc., so I can win people over. But look, having had a German name was a different life. Now that I have my own name again, I notice the difference. It's Middle Eastern. When I get to speak, people are cool with me. But if they only see my name, my chances at apartments, good treatment, or consideration anywhere are zero. I'm cool with celebrating my culture. You can be connected without the name. For workforce, schools, etc., I'd just go the easy route. However, if you have the feeling your fiancé is generally ashamed and wants to be low-key about everything else, y'all should dig deeper and have a convo. 'Cause that is a problem. Why is your last name more important than hers? Why is your heritage more important than hers? Personally, I am against giving children their father's name only. Because if a couple divorces, a good percentage of the time, the fathers eventually become absent, especially if they meet someone else and have more kids. I have not seen my dad since I was 13 after 3 years of erratic contact, and I am so glad I have my mother's surname. My cousin has not seen her dad since she was 4 and unfortunately had his surname. I would absolutely insist on the name being double-barreled. At least is this a compromise either if you would be amenable to? I also have to agree with your fiancé with regard to racism and the name. I have a friend who is blonde, appears white, and is third-generation Asian mixed race with the surname Chaudhry. She likes being unique and gets a kick out of people's expressions when she walks into an interview or whatever, because she's not what they are expecting. But she has said overall she can't wait to get married and lose the name and the stereotypes that come with it, because she feels that it has held her back at times. How much did you push her after she brought up not using your last name? How many reasons did she come up with until she finally came up with that one? If that was her first remark, I'd rethink things. But I feel like a good chunk of the conversation is missing. Nail care. sounds like your fiancé wants to whitewash your future kids tbh. We gave our kids both our last names. Given my ethnicity, I'm aware this may lead to them facing bias. But I'm not planning to whitewash my kids. I'd be pissed if my husband had opposed this. I'd especially worry about what other things this would sip into. If she's willing to erase their ethnicity from their name to reduce bias. In what other aspects will she try to erase their ethnicity? Language? Food? Cultural traditions? The argument of whitewashing to avoid bias is one that applies to many things. And it is a very flawed argument. She's not wrong about the implications that a name from a different ethnicity may have. Bias and discrimination are real. But if she wants white kids, she should have kids with a white dude. I think the best option is to hive last names of both parents. I have seen many Latin American countries have this tradition. I like it.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Haircast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.